I want to continue with the theme of pride and place it I guess trying to place it into a perspective of what Pellin's about. And, you know, some of that is what David tried to do, what I've tried to do over all these years. We've got the 50th anniversary of David's death coming up, and I want to find a way to, I guess with pride, I'd like to you know, contact people in Vancouver. I don't quite know. But and do that with pride, you know, do that with pride, a certain amount of straightforwardness, a certain amount of brevity. It's a man who developed this material there, and died 50 years ago, and his work has continued in different ways. And Vancouver might like to recognize that in some way over the next 12 months. And I guess finding that and doing that with pride. And that gets directly into today's, hold on a moment. Yeah, that gets directly into today's material, the life forces. I know I've asked this before. When you read that, it reads straight, right? It's not a mirror image.
Yes, it reads straight.
Right, because when I look at it, I'm holding it up and then I look at what there and it's a mirror image, right? That disconcerts me a bit. Anyway, yeah, pride is all about the performance life force. And there is a place where, as I said earlier, hope is about the future, pride is about the past. I think they, in a way, come together because if we've got any chance of hope, we're going to need to be able to draw on memory links. So that is the past, which is a grounding for hope. And what I'm saying, pride is the past, but unless we do something with it, you know, it's sort of boring, blustering and boring. And it's interesting because, yeah, they're in a way, it could be said that with the performance life force, as it is about us, it is about us being in the world. We're more exposed, we're more naked, we're less protected. You know, it's the extrovert part of it that, you know, everyone can see. So, you know, we can look not good. And pride can look, and I think it's the reason pride's got such a bad press, because the downside of it, whether it's the hubris where our pride takes us to our own destruction and the destructions of those around us. As in war, because in a way, war is full of pride, good and bad. But we're out there in the world. And we're taking the shots that the world will throw at us. And, it's nice for me when there's only a few of us, because I can be freer with my political beliefs, okay? And as I've said before, and it still strikes me, Joe Biden had a reputation of, he was a serious politician, there's no doubt about that. But he had a reputation of someone, couldn't keep his mouth shut, full of, wanted to hear the sound of his own voice, boastful, and a bore in some circumstances. I mean, I can understand, and I guess I can be envy of, people who have a belief in God. Because I know a friend of mine who's quite religious said, well, he's getting it from God. God's helping him achieve this change. That's where it's coming from. This is a very religious man. That's not my particular take on it, but the validity of that. Who am I to come along and saying what he's doing is passive listening to hard feedback, when what he's doing is getting an inspiration from God and changing. Okay. But that he has changed, and that I guess in terms of today's topic, that he has turned the pride of being something of a boastful bore into a statesman, stature. And I think, if he just kept doing what he's doing now, nothing else, but just keep doing what you're doing now and what you said you're going to do, I think we'd be real happy. In 2 months, he's set himself onto a road of success and success for the country in 2 months. And, okay, skeptics and cynics, will meet you behind the woodshed, but, literally, if he just kept doing what he's doing, it'd be fine. That's an extraordinary thing to say. And I think with him, there's no doubt that the losses he's had in his life have deepened him. He's been very public about the losses. Everyone in America knows, he lost his first wife and baby in a car accident. It was just him and 2 kids, 2 boys. And then he lost his son recently to cancer. They're very public about those losses, tragedies. But I think we can say the performance life force is, as it has to be in any successful politician, is the main motivating force, the main one. You know, he, in a way, you could say he can relax because now he is the center of attention. He's the center of attention so much that he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. And depending on how you take it, therefore he can listen to God, or therefore he is passive listening to hard feedback. But you know, in American political literature, you know, there's always a question of how does a person grow in the presidency? That's always a question. And wow, this man's grown in 2 months. And I think in his containedness, you know, a man who would talk to the press and spend more time with the press than anybody else, always available. And now they've got to drag him out to get him to give a press conference. And he wants to put it off. You know, in terms of the sort of thing we're interested in here, which I guess is how do people tick and how do people fulfill themselves? I think there is a funny word to use, but there is a case history in Joe Biden about how holding on to pride, understanding, however, we do it with Pellin Tools, he does it in a different way. You know, holding on to the performance life force and the power in his own belief in himself, in his ability to be in public, his ability, his willingness to face defeat and have defeat happen to him, take risks. I think everybody would worry that I was using the fact that the group was really small to, and I think I can still do it, to, as I said earlier, indulge myself in talking about politics, okay? Which I couldn't quite do if we had 16 people. So it's nice for me, but just to go back over it, it's about the relationship, the life forces, and it's about how this session is about how pride is the performance life force. Pride, the performance life force is believing in ourselves, being prepared to take risks, being creative, being to stick ourselves out there in the public for better or for worse, whether it's you know, a young woman on a basketball court or on a tennis court or on a stage or the Grammys, you know, whether it's someone writing a book, whether it's that young woman, Andrea Gorman, you know, standing up, reading a poem when the president was being inaugurated. That's all the performance like that. And that belief in ourselves, a self-centeredness. Because one of the things we have in the Pellin life forces, and one of the things that I felt was one of those moments where I And I still feel this. And I also said here that, we've got the 50th anniversary of David's death coming up, and I want to make something of that different ways. But this, the life forces, to me, are one of the places where there was a particular quality of his mind, but was always appealed to me, okay? He didn't need to put people down. He didn't need to put out negative diagnosis. He didn't need to concentrate on the pathology, to use another way. He didn't deny it. But if you really understand the performance life force, and you read a biography of, or see a news item, of a pop star or a politician or a sporting hero, and they're very selfish, they're very self-centered. Sometimes they're not very good parents, they're not very good spouses. You get all this sort of stuff. They're not very nice often. And with David Pellin's material, no, that's not the case at all. That's just the nature of the performance life force. If they didn't have that, then they wouldn't produce the great performances, write the great songs, or win the tournaments. And there was something about him being able to grasp that. I just love it. And I guess I'm thinking, I'm coming up with things like that because how can how can I tell David Pellin to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, who has long forgotten him totally? Okay, that's my task. And yeah, I'll need performance life force to do that. Before the others came in, I was talking a lot about Joe Biden because I think he is a real exemplification of a lot of the things we're saying in Pellin. And he can certainly face his resistance to nourishing change and do something with it. But if you look at it from the material we presented here, it's because he's got the authority in our use of the word. He has got the authority he has always wanted. He wanted to be president. And that authority enables people to find the motivation or the fortitude to change. Now, if pride without, you could almost say, and what I was saying earlier is one of the ways we understand pride, it's the performance life force. And both pride and the performance life force, just getting at the Pellin material here, if you don't have evaluation, if you don't have evaluation strata, they can be real dangerous. And one of the things that evaluation strata would say to performance, almost as if it was sort of Pellin chair work, when we get back to virtual Italy retreats, which we will. you know, caring is going to, you know, because caring has a quiet voice. It's full of doubts. To drag it full of doubts. I'm saying that personally. You know, doubts at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's all caring life force stuff. But caring life force will say to performance, don't forget about me. I mean, you forget about me and you're in trouble. And you can see it in, I think the term now is the previous guy. I think that's what Joe Biden called Donald Trump. He wouldn't use his name, he just said the previous guy. Yeah, you could see it, you know, no caring life force. And there are probably some people who can have loads of performance life force and not much caring life force and do all right. But there are often people who are just consumed by a purpose that is nourishing, contributing. It's still dangerous. It's still dangerous. And what caring is going to say to performance around pride is, don't forget about me. Because what I, as caring, am saying to you, okay, you've got all that going for you, but do not forget there are other people around. In another place, I'm talking about how if we've got choices to make, you know, the low of the pendulum might have something to say to the high of the pendulum. And around pride, I don't know if you can hear them, but I've got seagulls outside my window, which is rather nice. Yeah, Cynthia.
Well, before you move on to another topic, I just have a kind of funny example of the whole not forget about performance life force and the caring life force. And Tamara might be the only, it may be Elizabeth, but Tamara might be the only gets this reference. But when I was a kid, there was a show, The Brady Bunch. And in the Brady Bunch, there was, you know, the kids, and every time you'd see this whole performance life force, and there was this big swelled head syndrome. Anytime somebody's performance life force, their head got swelled, and then they caused problems in their performance. But I could see how that's almost an example. It was forgetting about other people, and they had to remember their caring life force. I mean, that was like a common theme.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I developed the nourishing families, the basic metaphor for Pellin Tools work, that's one of the points I think you get in a nourishing family, is that the person who's doing all that, not making room for somebody else, will be taught. Hey, you know, you're interrupting your sister all the time. And going back to pride, hi Mary.
Hi.
Can, as I said, it can take us into really destructive places. As we looked at, not quite as dramatically, as we looked at some of the dangers in hope. You know, the way that hope can set people up to be devastated if it's not grounded. And what I'm saying about pride, is that it needs to be grounded in evaluation strata. And the other thing I was looking at in using that, what the caring life force will say to pride. And then I think you've also got what the material life force will say to pride. Because one of the things we are saying in Pellin is that these are of equal legitimacy and value. It's one of the differences in Pellin, and as I mentioned earlier, you know, the 50th anniversary of David death coming up. And I guess one of my points of pride in maintaining both his voice and his work and his values in a very deep way. He hardly stated his values. Cynthia.
I was hoping you could finish your sentence with the material life force says to pride.
Thank you. Yeah, what material life force will say to pride. One, it will say, you need me. Like a politician needs the funds, the sporting person needs the endorsement. You know, you need me. If you're going to get anywhere, you need me. And don't cut me out just because accountants are boring. And I think it's a place where caring and material would come together at best. And, you know, I think the whole, I said earlier, Mary, that when there are just three of us, that I really like it when it's really, really small, because then I can talk about politics. If it was 16 people, I'd have to shut up. So I was talking about politics. But I think what caring in material would say, and that's where, because one of the things that Biden said, and he fulfilled it, I will surround myself with people who are brighter than me. I think it could be argued that he's also surrounding himself with people who are stronger than he is. And that's a pretty heavy statement I'm making. So he will listen. So performance needs some help in listening. You know, material can be a very few words, quite cold, a bit sort of official and bureaucratic almost. In some ways easily dismissed, oh, you're just the financial person. I'm the creative one. You know, I'm the actor, I'm the director. You're just the producer, you're just sort of over there. You're just the fundraiser, you're just over there. You're just the sponsor. Oh my God, I've got to go see my sponsors, okay. But, you know, and I'm Serena Williams, or I'm Taylor Swift. Why do I have to go and see my boring sponsors? You know, performance life force is pretty full of itself, no question. Yeah, performance life force has great trouble with the Pellin truth line, okay? When I'm full of myself, I can't admit that I've only got a tiny little bit of the truth. But anyway, bringing that back a bit to, so material would say, you know, okay, for one, for God's sake, take in that I support you. Don't just dismiss me. Or I'm a representative of Nike. Or I'm a representative of Vogue, you know. Don't just dismiss me because I'm a money person. Yeah, Cynthia. Cease.
Yeah, I wanted to, I talked earlier in the week with some people working that wanted to become activists, and we were talking about who was somebody that we, was a model for us. And the one I talked about was George Lakey, which maybe nobody has heard of. But he is a Quaker that he grew up in a Quaker family, but the reason I'll talk about him a little bit, some of the things he did, but he's very clear that what helped him decide who he was and what he was going to do were other people who were models for him and that were supportive of him. And he talked about when he was in college, he was in the Freedom Summer, where they went, as maybe a lot of people know, they were young people who went around to get out the vote in the South, and especially get out the vote for African Americans. But he and his friends came back one day and they saw the faces on the other people, the SNCC members, and realized what had happened, that there were people missing and probably killed. And it was a very rough time. And what he found was, he said they surrounded these young people and took care of them and nurtured them. So they didn't just give up because of what had happened. And he said it was such a good model that you cannot do great things without great people around you, the people that will nurture you. And then he went, he'd been married, but he discovered he was gay. And so he became involved in gay liberation parades and activities and really felt released, even though he kept great connection with his previous wife and kids. And he said that was another transformation where he felt just the encouragement of people who said it's okay to be yourself. And then Vietnam, and he went with a group that were delivering food and aid to the North Koreans. And while they were there, a Navy boat came in to stop them. And so he had to make this decision at that point. How do I want to live my life? And I thought this was how do I want to live my life? Do I want to sit here on this boat or do something else? So he jumped off the boat and he swam to shore, and he was in North Korea, and he helped deliver the food and medicine and helping to take care of people. I think that question of what am I here for is so important to people. And the thinking about that is, I guess it goes back to purpose, really. What is my purpose here? And is it really what I want to do? And do I have support for it? And he's gone on to do all kinds of things, organizing against mountaintop removal and all kinds of other things. But I think those things have this sense of purpose and to have support and a vision are really what a lot of activists that I know have been able to do.
Have or have not been able to do? I couldn't quite catch it.
Oh, well, a lot have been able to, and a lot have not been able to. But I think when they get with a group that has a vision and that fits with their vision, then they're able to move along. And so most people realize, like you were talking, these one-man shows does not work for social activism.
Yeah.
It's a dead end.
Yeah.
You can't keep it up by yourself. You're gonna fall down. And I think that's, I don't know what that would be considered, but it has to do with, what would that be? Finding other people of purpose, or
well, I think, just to come in there, because this is really, really important. One of the ways I see it, just going back a little bit for answering your direct question, I think some of it is being able to articulate it. And I guess there's something about being able to, well, take the bold action, but then articulate it, and being able to come up with the sentence, what am I here for? What are we here for? The the part of when men shows don't work is performance life force. Okay, it's the part of performance life force that it's a surprising one. It's a part of it's charisma. It's a part of performance life force that attracts people. You know, someone walks into a room and people feel better because that person's there. It's the song of our generation, not a later one. You're walking into a party as if you're walking onto a yacht.
Yeah, okay? Well, that's a different kind of.
What I'm saying is that's the part of performance life force that can attract people. Okay, so I think I think without purpose, because I think you're right, it's all about purpose. I think without purpose, pride could get narrowed down, performance could get narrowed down, because, help me with the name, you've got Nikki, the young Swedish girl.
Greta Thunberg?
Yeah.
Greta. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, she was on her own. She was just one person, a kid, 14, 15, sitting outside the parliament, wasn't it? On her own. But and this is why performance life force is mysterious. She had the performance life force bit that it was hardly any time at all when she was attracting some people. And it wasn't very long at all. She ignited the goddamn world. She had followers everywhere. And that's performance life force. That's being able to sort of grab people. And so it's performance life force plus purpose. And I think performance life force plus purpose, I think where pride comes in, I'll sit here in the rain, even if I'm on my own, and something communicates, okay? Something communicates. You could almost say it's the spiritual side of politics, okay? Somehow or other, this sort of, tall, awkward man who'd lost his last election became Abraham Lincoln. This guy in a wheelchair who was intellectual lightweight became Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It's just, and I would imagine your George Lakey has some of that as well. And I think one of the things within the performance life force, and it's probably something in the best of pride, but anything within the performance life force requires self-discipline. You can almost see it across the board. The Judi Dench has to learn her own lines. She can't have someone else learn them for her. She can't delegate it. She can't hire someone. She's got to learn her own lines. The poet's got to write his own stuff. And in another way, George Lakey had to jump off the boat. So it's the risk-taking and the discipline and the self-belief. And then I think the purpose says, and I guess it will be a bit, I'm just using the tool, I'm just using the examples to teach here. I'm not saying these are formulas and this is the way it is for sure, but I think there's something about enough caring around to say you need people. You can't do it on your own, you need people. And then enough material around, you won't make it on your own, you need people. I guess in another language, the caring life force is saying, you need love or you're not going to make it. And the material life force is saying you need money or you're not going to make it. And then you get structure. And then you get Stacey Abrams, okay? I mean, she's another example of all this. Cynthia, you were going to come in.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about talking about the musical Hamilton, and I was thinking about in terms of the performance life force and the material life force. And one of the things that Hamilton was, I mean, he certainly had plenty of performance life force, but also integrating and making sure the material life force. And there's like one part in the famous song "My Shot" where he's like, yes, but if we fight, this just become an endless cycle of violence. We have to take care of our financials, and if we don't take care of our financials, we're not going to have a country to stand by. And how that wasn't very popular, but just that whole kind of merging of, I mean, I guess in real life, I guess he had actually started planning the Treasury Department while he was the aide to then General Washington during the Revolutionary War. He was sitting there studying and planning the financials. So it's just sort of interplay between the two.
You shouldn't do that. You've got to be listening. I'm General Washington. You've got to listen to my campaign plans, okay? Because the future financial structure of the country is boring.
Well, there's also a line, Thomas Jefferson.
Across the river and wave the flag. But if you look at the history of it and the success of the country, the fact that the material life force was there with him right at the beginning, before there was a country he was thinking about, how the hell are we going to do it financially? And if you take that through there, 250 plus years? And now in that position, the head of the Treasury Department is a woman, okay? And an older woman. So I think it sort of, it does illustrate the point that, the three of them come together. And I think in terms of looking at pride, we can sort of say with confidence, because this is looking at pride in terms of performance life force and the other life forces. It's not particularly bringing the pendulum. But if you look at pride in terms of the life forces, we've got a way to make pride safe, okay? So, you can take it as far as you want to go, as long as you've got those other ones there. And I always think that Lincoln, who had this sort of folksy, rather dumb sort of humor, cracker barrel humor, told these jokes. As the preacher said to the widow, and he'd go off on a long story. And some, in the most, at times, inappropriate time. Because, we just lost Fool's Run and, we're in trouble. I don't think he ever lost touch with his caring life force, ever. If you read him deeply. And, his performance life force was, off the chart. But he never lost touch with that bit of caring life force, we always say. And you can sort of read in how he, just relate to people in a way where, he's just an awkward man who wasn't that confident that he could achieve what he'd set out to achieve. He would at times relate to people like that, including people, who weren't very senior. And then tell the people who were very senior, he'd tell them these sort of stories and make them listen. So, there's something about his, and I guess it just comes through, there's something about his humanity that he never lost touch with it. So I think we can say with this material, we can make pride safe without diluting it. Because I guess where I started with this material on pride was looking at how do foster kids make it? How do people who've got, not much opportunity, how do people who haven't had the chance in of solid and good memory, who have suffered deprivation, prejudice, put downs, and threats. Japanese Americans were interned during the Second World War, and Korean Americans were shot in Atlanta yesterday. I mean, that stream of anti-Asian hate. Historically, it was called the Yellow Peril. And the Chinese were going to come into the west coast of America in their tens of millions and take over the country. That was one of the bases of that particular 150 years ago. That particular started that particular stream of hate. It went on for a long time. Third, fourth generation Chinese people, third and fourth generations American, okay, did not feel they were American and were not recognized as American in San Francisco, in California. That's just true, historically true. And so, you know, how do people come through that? Right, this is where I started with. You know, how do the foster kids come through with it? How do people coming out of jail come through it? And yeah, you know, we've got AA and Al-Anon and Pellin and therapeutic programs. But some people come through it another path. And that's where I got into the stuff about pride. I know when I was working in, I guess there's a particular sort of pride. When I was working in, as a parole officer, working in a small agency, John Howard Society of British Columbia, John Howard Society of British Columbia, which is still going very well. Just because I've looked them up on the internet. And it was not a big agency, it was smaller then than it is now. And a colleague of mine was called John Webster, and he had a guy on parole. You'll pardon it, Cynthia, but I've got to swear. And he had, I can't remember the guy's name, but he would phone John up every Monday morning. And he'd pick up the phone. You fucking well listen to me, Webster. I'm doing well and it's got nothing fucking to do with you, and hang up, okay? Every sort of morning, John would get, every Monday morning, John would get that call. I can't say much more about it than that, but sort of pride, and I've seen that. I've seen people do well who had a very rough hand of cards. And, you know, it's from, and then, of course, as you know, there's a lot of literature, wonderful literature coming out now, as well as previous literature. You know, how did people come through slavery? How did women come through slavery? How did women come through slavery so they end up 200 years later being powerhouses of the American political system? And I think some of that pride. It doesn't matter what you do to me. You know, you're not going to take away who I am. You can humiliate me. You can. It's hard to say, but it's simply historically factual. You can humiliate me. You can take my children away from me, so I'll never see them again, and so on. But you know, one of the great writers, you know, called the Soul of Black People, and that was pride. And as I looked at last time, yeah, you know, I think we can see that come through the music. We can see that comes through gospel. And I guess the purpose, going back to Cesa's point, the purpose there is somehow or other we are going to survive, and we are going to do something that so our kids have the chance of doing well. And the church, which initially they were forced into, they transformed that, talk about contribution from hurt, into a channel for that purpose. and it's there. No, it's there in Stacey Abrams, it's there in Michelle Obama. It's just there. That's their lineage. You want to come in at all on this, Mary?
I'm sorry to miss the beginning. I just found myself thinking about the interesting process in people writing their solo shows, that they have things that they know they don't want to write about, and then they do, because that's where the meat is, and that has often been that they were in the foster care system, as it happens. It's one of the themes that you see repeated in different people's show. And I think they do uncover a kind of pride in their resilience, or what gratitude they have for bits that were good about that, or whatever, you know, in the process of writing their shows and using their performance life force.
Do you want to come in for Nikki?
No, whoops, no, and I just need to hang up and call back in a minute.
Okay.
Thanks.
Tamara, would you like to come in?
No, I think I'm past.
I couldn't hear you, sorry.
Oh, I'm past today.
Okay, that's fine. Taking back a bit to, I guess the part that is interesting for me, this is just personal, the part of me that's sort of critical of my field. I've sort of parked that a lot recently. I'm a bit pleased with that. I was the cleverest critic. But owning a bit of that, I think there's something about the systems within the helping professions. And this was my first motivation, I know that, but I didn't articulate it, because I didn't just want to be a critic. It's too easy for me. And as I said to you, I think I shared here, I got a piece of feedback years and years ago. This guy, Martin Foster. That Martinson, that's an interesting, he passed away 4 or 5 years ago. He was in Columbus, Ohio, just outside of it. See? Anyway, Martin arrived in Pellin in a wheelchair. Big guy, good looking, blonde, tall. He'd been shot through the neck by a kid in Chicago, not Detroit, Cleveland. Yeah, it was Chicago. But he had his brother's good humor van, and this group of children wanted ice creams, and they wouldn't pay for them, and he stood up to them. And one of the kids, 14, pulled out a gun and shot him through the neck, and he lost all feeling from his neck down. He was a ski bum drug dealer. That's who Martin was. He refused to prosecute. Anyway, he came to, arrived in a wheelchair. Because he got incredibly good insurance settlement. So he could, going to Pellin was part of his medical treatment, etc. Anyway, he marked the feedback once. This was in my very critical and rather arrogant times, perhaps. And we're doing what we call self-identity feedback. Everybody goes around in the group and gives 3 minutes of feedback, everybody else. It's quite full of words. And Martin just looked to me and said, because his voice was quite squeaky because of his, total loss of everything from the neck down, just about. He said, Peter, you got too much going for you to take so many goddamn cheap shots. That's all I got to say. I've not forgot it. Okay, I've not forgotten it. But I guess sort of owning and claiming all of that, I think that around pride, the helping professions need to look at how they can take it away from people. It's hard to be proud to be a foster kid. No foster kid wants anyone to say they're a foster kid. And they so often get from teachers, from nurses, from social workers, oh, you're the one in care. Every foster child is heard that. And we almost set up systems that takes away pride. And of course, if you go back to what we sadly got to revisit, who thought we'd be talking about Jim Crow at this time? But we are. But all those systems are aimed to take away pride. And if I can make you queue up in the rain for 4 or 5 hours to vote, I'm taking away some of your pride. And of course, with the great leaders, that's been flipped. No, I'm proud to stay in the line for 4 or 5 hours. I mean, there's pride working there, but if we could call them that, the Jim Crow activists, what they want to do is take pride away from people. That's what racism is all about. And it's built into the word, isn't it? White supremacy. So I'm superior to you. If you can't have pride because you're way down there. I won't let you have pride because I will look down on you because I'm superior. Yeah, Cynthia.
I think that in our culture, women in particular are socialized not to have pride, and are and with performance life force. I mean, I remember clear. I mean, I don't know if it's still the case today. I mean, I'm now 50, so that was a while back. But I remember when I was in I was not good at sports. I was terrible at gym class, and generally, but I remember in high school when I was in an all-girls class, I was always the worst one in sports and stuff like that. Suddenly, when I was in a co-ed gym class, I became one of the best girls there, and I know my ability didn't improve.
What class? I missed
Gym
it.
class,
Right.
physical education, like sports, that kind of thing. If I was in an all-girls class, I was always like the worst, although no one was picked. This is in high school. But as soon as boys were present, suddenly I became the best one of the girls, and my abilities didn't change. So it was clear that these girls were hiding their abilities when the boys were present. It was really...
That's interesting, because I couldn't understand what you're saying. That's incredible, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and that goes, cease.
No, finish your sentence. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's interesting, Cynthia, because I had a similar experience. No, of the gym when I was younger. I was always the last one that was picked. I was, don't have her on your group. Now, when I was older, that wasn't really a thing. So I wasn't in gym class anymore, thank God. But but I was thinking while you were talking that I don't have that same experience that Peter has about jockeying as far as therapists. I think it's because I hang out more with women, and we're more like everybody, you know, we're trying to bring everybody up. I mean, that's where we're always complimenting people or encouraging people, or I just, I'm glad I'm a woman. I mean, that it's never, I mean, it's not, it would just be considered icky in the crowds that I go around if somebody was like lording it out over other people. And so I guess I wonder if it might be a male, female, and also a cultural thing depending on where you live. But I just feel bad for you, Peter, if you've had to go through all that, because I wouldn't want to even stay in the field if I was having to deal with all that crap. People putting other people down, and it just seems so weird as for social workers and psychologists to be doing that kind of thing. That's completely against what we're trying to do for our clients.
Exactly, and well, I got out, didn't I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Eventually.
Mm-hmm. But that's, I don't, it sounds like a really rigid, rugged thing to be in.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. And again, I go back to, you know, Martin Foster and how I was so critical when I saw things that I didn't think worked. But I think this is just personal. In a way, I'm still in that situation. And, you know, it's a bit too much carrying life force. I'm not that good at, I'm not that good within systems, okay? I'm just not that good. It's not quite my skill set. And I guess I found a platform to do something different for me. And but it was working inside some of those. I know you did as well, Cease. You were working in Columbus when you were working with physically and mentally challenged people.
Mm-hmm.
I said to you at that time, you were working with people I couldn't work with. I knew that.
I wouldn't be what?
You were working with people I could not work with.
Oh, uh-huh.
Okay, I mean, that goes back a long way. But, you know, the feels that substance abuse was a field where the dynamic that I don't like, you know, the dynamic where having someone being a client or a patient is dispowering rather than empowering. And I guess one of the ways I had a bit of a niche in substance abuse, you don't get that there in the same way, it's different. And particularly as you have a lot of, and pride, I think, there. You know, you have a lot of people who are brilliant in the field because they're ex-addicts, is the simple phrase. With their whole contribution from work there. Yeah, and that pride. And I guess, I mean, I love it when you say, you know, you have not experienced that way. I just love that because, you know, that's also my belief. you know, there's always been good people there, always. And I know that when I was, you know, before I set up Pellin, which we know now when it was, because 15th of June next year is the 50th anniversary. So I guess I left my job 6 months before then, so I've got it all located. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back. But just staying with the theme, not always seeing, you know, very much coming up with the idea that, you know, the person's got to come before the role. And Cynthia.
Well, I was thinking in terms of systems and disempowering people and taking away pride, and how I've seen it. Maybe that's just because of how I, you know, because I have a lot of material life force, I guess. I think that a lot of the times, and sometimes it may be unintentional, I don't know, but a lot of the ways I think the system takes away prides from people is not through the professionals or that, but through things about the material life force. Like, for example, what you have to do in order to get, I mean, there's a lot of things in order to get material aid or assistance, you have to, you know, the process can be very humiliating. You know, I mean, I remember when I worked as a group home with developmentally disabled adults, where I worked as a case manager. You know, and I did it for them, so it's much easier if it's not personal. And I did some of it as a lawyer. I mean, I did different things as a lawyer. I was more working that, but there's just a lot of things, and even like simple things that people don't even think about. For example, one of the things we had, there were two. There was a man and a woman in separate group homes who were in love with each other. They both had Down syndrome. They, you know, he was engaged. And in fact, part of it is a joke I had. When she got mad at him, she threw away the ring and couldn't find it. And I said, when you throw away the ring, you always have to make sure you know where it is so you can get it when you're not mad anymore. But the thing is, they could not get married. And it wasn't about children. You know, they were there. They could not get married because if they did, they would lose their benefits. They would lose